CK, it is so amazing to have you back. I did an episode last week. I'm pretty sure it was the worst episode we've ever done ever, and it's because I just rambled for 25 minutes. So it turns out the people aren't a fan of that. But man, I am so happy to have you back. There is so much going on in the world. I actually think it's part of what's going on is that you can't keep up with it. Dude, it's impossible to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, the Pope died yesterday. Or no, the Pope
RIP.
died today. Yeah, JD Vance visited him yesterday. There's I mean, Easter was yesterday, obviously. There's so much in the news about everything. We wanted to talk Harvard, we want to talk deportations. I think we're still going to talk that, but like it's almost old news as of like 48 hours ago.
Dude, that's exactly it. So, I have my like news channels that I follow, and I'm trying to keep up with just reading headlines, and I'll deep dive something if I find it interesting. But it is, I know I'm kind of hitting this point a lot already, only a minute in, but there's too much to keep up with that you can't even actually make sense of what's going on because it's already onto the new thing. Like just before we hopped on, I was reading all this information's coming up right now about the SecDef, Pete Hegseth getting booted because he has a second signal chat allegedly, and apparently Trump's inner circle is like, nah, dude, we're done with this guy. Articles coming out or posts coming out from the Pentagon basically saying, hey, this is the most dysfunctional that it's ever been, ever. Help, help, help. Oh my God, please help. And dude, we're not even talking about the economy, dude. Like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, doesn't look good for Pete. I will say his fault. I mean, what has he done other
Dude,
than,
he's a war fighter, bro. He is a war fighter. That's what he's
yeah,
done.
he
He
wrote
does
a
PT
book.
with the soldiers.
And to be fair, we were saying, maybe a good pick to get someone new and something fresh. We were saying that, right? But
Definitely.
call it like it is. Some people said it was good. Some people said it's going to be disastrous, and it's looking right now that disastrous is winning out.
Yeah, man. And that's what you have to be. At the end of the day, you have to call a spade a spade. You have to be as unbiased as possible. Like, if we feel a certain way, hey, we're going to say, hey, we believe it. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the Trump administration, what I am actually probably the only thing I'm 100% certain on is that this entire administration is 50-50. Like, it's either going to be like, hey, this is great for America, or this is terrible. It's either going to tank the economy, or you're going to have our secondary, tertiary effects about money leaving the United States, being invested in other countries. They're talking about the brain drain. You're talking about all these other things, and which is why we want to talk about Harvard. Or it's going to be like, nope, we're saving the economy. We're creating infrastructure in the U.S. that's going to last, decades and decades, and we're doing all the right things to sustain along America. And you know what, CK? This is the problem. We're looking at a long-term solution through a short-term lens, and I think that kind of like really messes up. Like, is this going well or is this not?
Yeah, that's probably true. And another thing I think Trump will admit is like sometimes he doesn't get it right with his cabinet picks. Now, and he said this many times on the campaign trail. Biden fired zero people. Zero people.
Yep.
Some people
Yep.
left on their own because it was just naturally time, but he didn't fire any of his cabinet picks. And you think everyone was doing like an outstanding job? I don't think so. So if we're firing people because they're not cutting it, I would say that's not a knock on Trump. You could say it's a knock for picking him in the first place. Sure, he doesn't get it all right, but at least hopefully, he'll admit it.
Yeah, no, there's dude, there's definitely some truth to that, right? You don't want it like if you hire 100, I don't know how many people the president actually blesses off on and then has to go in front of Congress or just the president picks. Let's just say 200 just to make it easy. There's no way you're batting 100% with every single pick you make is great. But at the same time, in the same breath, there's about 6 positions that really stand out amongst all of them. SecDef is definitely one of them. And we're like 2 months in, going on month 3 in his administration. You're already about to fire the guy. Like, that's the issue. Like, he couldn't even make it 6 months. He couldn't even make it a year. So it's like this clearly was a bad pick. And again, it goes back. It at the end of the day also does it hurt Trump's credibility and the agenda Trump's trying to push. Whether he really cares about that and does his own thing is, I guess, maybe a different story entirely.
Yeah, that's true. I will say Trump probably would rather have Hegseth 4 times over than Milley because
Sure, Milley is
Milley turns
arguably the
around and
worst general in American history and a traitor to this country.
that's a hot take.
Do you think? Oh
Uh,
wait, really? You think that's a hot take? Why?
no, I don't think. I'm just saying it's an opinion, right?
Oh, okay.
Many people will have differing opinions, but all I'll say is that just like factually, Milley came out and blasted Trump when when he was out the door, right? And I don't
Yeah,
think that's the problem. It was downright like almost like I wouldn't say treasonous, but like traitorous to Trump. He wasn't doing the will of the commander in chief. And
that's
Pete
fair.
Hegseth is trying to do the will of the commander in chief. He's just a little incompetent
Yeah, in my comments
or
about Mark Milley, I don't.
inexperienced.
Yeah, that's fair. That's from my comments about Mark Milley. For those, just Google him if you don't know who he is. He was the general, the chief of staff during the pullout of Afghanistan. Now, I don't think he's an actual traitor or an enemy to the state. I don't know. We can debate it. But the reason why I think so poorly of him is because of the pullout in Afghanistan and how I view that as one of the greatest failures since 9/11. Look into it. Do your own research. I just think it's something that isn't talked about as much as it should be, and it's really just those men and women dying, or really the Marines and the one U.S. soldier that died in Afghanistan during the pullout, to me is just one of the most avoidable things that could ever happen. Whatever. I am talking about things people don't care about right now. I am on a soapbox. I will get off of it. All right, CK, let's get folks, man. We got to talk Harvard. So let me read off this little blurb that I got. So in April, so the month we're currently in, the Trump administration issued a letter to Harvard demanding extensive changes to the university's policies and governance. These demands include relinquishing control over hiring, admissions, and instructions, halting recognition of central pro Palestinian groups, and reporting foreign students who violated university policies. Although some officials later claimed the letter was unauthorized, the administration proceeded to freeze $2.2 billion in federal funding and initiated investigations into Harvard's operations. Harvard, under its president, rejected the administration's demands, asserting that they exceed lawful authority and infringed upon the university's independence and constitutional rights. The Harvard president emphasized that the university would not surrender its autonomy or constitutional protections. Following Harvard's refusal, the Trump administration escalated its actions by freezing significant federal grants and contracts, threatening the university's tax exempt status, and warning of potential loss of ability to enroll foreign students. CK, there are so many things to get in here. One, I just want to start off by saying, in the most classic Trump thing ever, that this is unprecedented. I cannot recall a time in modern U.S. history where where a president or the federal government went after institution, especially Harvard's caliber. But before I get into some of the questions I have for you, what are your overall takes on this?
I mean, the biggest take, I think the elephant in the room is why are we giving 2 point what is it 2.4 billion dollars to Harvard when their endowment is 53.2 billion? Why do they need money from the United States government and in turn from the taxpayer? Why do tradesmen, plumbers, teachers, like why is it in their interest for their hard-earned money to go an academic institution that has the most wealthy donors in the history of the world?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. When you look at Harvard, you see people like Obama that graduated from Harvard and a bunch of other super famous people, super influential people that have graduated from Harvard, which is why it is one of the premier universities in the world, not just the United States. Now, from what I read, is that hey, these are federal programs that any college or university can obtain, and of course, Harvard attains it because all the powerful people have pretty much come from Harvard. Not all, but a lot of powerful people have come from Harvard that now sit in powerful positions, and they're kind of feeding their college that they went to make sure that Harvard stays prestigious. So I'm with you, honestly. Like, yes, colleges can apply for grants, they can apply for research loans, they can apply for X, Y, and Z to help the school. But the way I look at it, I'm like, hey, this is a private university, so they're private for a reason, so they can do what they want to do. They are, I think, CK, you can correct me. I think the richest school in America by a large portion, and they're the ones receiving billions of dollars. Do they really need billions of dollars from the federal government? I don't know, man. I just cannot buy the justification, dude. I cannot get my head around it.
Do any of them? I mean, if you think about like Doge, because Doge, that's what Doge did. This, like, you can say Doge is a failure, but what it did was, like, in the positive, is it put a microscope under federal spending. It may not have cut all the federal spending, but at least, like, the American people are woken up to, like, why are we spending, like, because this is all of our money when we spend it on whatever we spend it on. It's either coming from taxpayers or it's coming from debt, right? There's the
Yep.
only two.
Yep.
We're either paying for it or we're not paying for it. And if we're not paying for it, then we pay for it in inflation. So
Yeah.
it's either we're either paying for it now or we're paying for it later. And why? The question is why? Like, is it necessary? If you say we need police, if you say we need roads, if we say many people, most people, some people won't, but most people will say we need those things. When you say we need money for Harvard grants, most people will say we don't need that. And I would rather have the money in my own pocket. And again, this is the argument. The classic argument is, well, at $2.2 billion with 300 million people is like $6 a person. But we said this in one of the first episodes I was on. The government is death by 1,000 cuts. Okay.
Yeah.
You, of course, nothing kills you, right? Nothing by itself kills you, but it just adds up. And if you $6 here, $8 here, it just adds up. It adds up, and you end up paying for all of it. And you say, why is half my paycheck, or why is this much going to taxes?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And for those that are listening, if you're not in the same thought process as CK and I, please leave a comment in the comment section. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Because honestly, I don't think there's much of an argument to defend their billions of dollars that they're receiving from the federal government. I really don't. I understand it's for research, and yes, they're doing breaking edge stuff, but you are the richest university in the country. You have the most powerful people backing you.
And if it's
You
worth it to you, you can donate.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And trust me, the super rich people in America, anyways, they have to donate a certain amount of money anyways for tax exemption. So I'm sure they have no problem giving it to their alma mater. So there's two things I want to touch on about Harvard, though, and one thing that really hasn't got the attention that I thought it would, and that's talking about bringing in um, foreign students from different countries, whether it's countries in Asia or countries in Europe or South America, Africa, wherever. One thing that Trump's at least pressing as an issue is like, hey, we are going to take the visas, or we're just not going to allow them in the country. You're going to have to tell them to leave the country before we forcibly remove them from the country. They can't go to school here anymore. And so what I want to talk about, though, is, do you think it's right to have foreign students go to a top prestigious American university, taking away seats for American students to attend to, right? So if, let's say, you bring in 1,000 foreign students from wherever in the world, that's 1,000 less Americans that can attend the college in their own country. Do you think there's like an argument saying like, hey, we should prioritize Americans receiving top tier education rather than students from other countries?
I don't know. It's, again, a private institution, right? Let them do whatever they want. Like, that's what a free market is. If you want foreign students, then great. The problem is, again, with federal funding. Now, you can say the problem is with federal funding. If I'm funding this with federal grants, then why should I be letting foreign students in? But, like, we have to divide the problems up. Like, the
Yeah,
problem, we go back to the root is we shouldn't be funding it in the first place. And then
sure.
do whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. I like that a lot, right? If you're a private institution, do what you want. Because if you look at public universities, public colleges, they usually, or I want to say almost all of them, because I can't think of an example not, where they have to meet a certain quota of in-state students, where they have to be like, hey, 50% of our students have to be in state because we're funded by the state's budget, which makes a lot of sense. Your taxpayers are going to serve the students in your state, so that makes a lot of sense. And they have a discounted tuition compared to out-of-state students.
Yeah. And this is essentially what the outcome of this conflict has been. Harvard saying, we're not going to do that. We don't need your endowment. We'll do our own thing. And so, like, it's extra steps, but, like, we're getting to the result. I think that is the best result. It's like, Harvard, you do whatever you want because you're a private institution. Government, we're not funding this institution. Now, another issue with this was that, specifically with the Trump administration, is that, like, it came out that like 98% of Harvard staff, it might have been 94%, voted for Democrats or donated to the Democrat Party. So like
Yep.
this isn't news, and this isn't specific to Harvard, but like academia is far left leaning. You can argue that, but I think it's pretty factual. I think statistically, it's pretty far left leaning, especially with the most elite colleges. Now, people will say, well, it's left leaning because the people who are most knowledgeable and most educated tend to go with that because it's the right side of it. I no, I mean, I I think it's a little bit of indoctrination and a little bit of it's a little bit of everything, but again, why are we funding things that are like political by nature?
Hmm.
Why are
Well,
taxpayers? By we, I mean taxpayers.
yeah, no, I know what you mean there, and I think that's a fair point, and deserves fair criticism, or at least the ability for the American people to decide and look into it to be like, hey, is this something we want to do? But something that I don't feel as comfortable with is when the federal government does get involved into education. Now, I agree with some of the points you just made about like, hey, I think, and I've talked about on other episodes, like, hey, I think that colleges are kind of brainwashing students to a degree, at least some colleges. Or not, maybe brainwashing is too aggressive of a word, but trying to ensure that they have a certain thought process, or view things a certain way. But when we look at the federal government trying to get into Harvard, being like, hey, we want you to cut back on DEI or eliminate it altogether. Hey, we want you to change up your administration. We send you all these demands. It's a lot. It's incredibly hard for me to get behind that. Now, if the federal government says, hey, we don't want to fund you anymore because taxpayer dollars and you're rich and you're private, I think that is totally separate than the Trump administration saying like, hey, you have to meet these 10, 11, 12 demands we're sending you. You can't accept foreign students anymore. I think that's very, very dangerous, and honestly a little scary.
Maybe scary if they're demanding it by like law, but they're just. I think it's a carrot stick situation. It's
Okay.
you want this carrot of federal funding, then you comply with our federal like regulations of DEI and foreign students, but and if you don't, you don't. Like they're not saying you have to or we will shut you down. That is when there's government overreach. But I
Okay.
but again, I think the whole like you're right. The actual problem is we're funding them in the first place. And this is just extra steps to get to like just stop funding them. This is not in
Yep.
the interest of the majority of taxpayers.
Yeah, I mean they have $70,000 tuition. Like, how much money do they really need billions of dollars a year to fund their research? I don't know. Maybe I need to do more research into like what Harvard is doing research on that costs billions of dollars. I don't know, man. Just anytime I see the federal government get involved, it just makes me a little antsy. Whether it's the Trump administration or Biden, just any government getting involved in things I'm not a fan of. But yeah, maybe to
But
your point, it's similar to highways. Remember how the federal government's like, we'll build you highways and we'll take care of them, but you have to raise the drinking age to 21 or we won't fund your highways anymore. Maybe it's a little bit of that. Do what we want or you won't get the big paycheck from the federal
yeah,
government.
if you think about it, MR, like they're not getting involved now. They've been involved, right? They've been funding Harvard for probably 50 years. So it's not like it's just news now because they're talking about withholding the funding. The problem
Yeah.
is government has been in every sector. Like it's like Orwellian how the tentacles have reached so far, and now we're just like we're blinded by like how far they reach. We're like, well, not this. We shouldn't take away from that. Yes, we should take away from everything.
Hmm.
That's
So,
I've been the biggest and like the worst thing the Trump administration, especially the Republican Congress under the Trump administration has done is not attack the budget. And
yes.
the only way we have to bring back the tentacles, government reach. We have to limit the government, and we're not doing that. We're not doing it in the budget. We're not doing it anywhere. It. I think to your point, it's a problem when we're doing it like in a political way, and we're still not decreasing the budget. We're saying we're attacking the people who aren't friends of Trump, but we're not actually
Yeah.
decreasing any spending. Yeah, then
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
why are we like, no, get at the root of the problem.
No, exactly. And you and I might be the biggest supporters about reducing the national debt and reducing government spending. And I read somewhere, gosh, I wish I had the numbers in front of me, where it basically said, like, hey, if a government is funding a certain percentage of the economy and providing a certain number of jobs, you have a problem on your hands. That is no longer, a free market. It's no longer an economy that can support itself. It's more of a it's just more of a government just keeping everything afloat, and I think that is where it gets really, really dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, like, we're expecting the government to prop up the economy. That's what's been happening. That's what happened in COVID. When you look, a lot of the recent years, when you look at American GDP growth, most of that growth has been in the public sector, and
Yeah,
not the private sector.
exactly. And then maybe let's take a moment here and let's look at this. Do you know someone that is a federal employee that either had to or got fired or had to put in his or accepted resignation by getting paid off for the next 6 9 months? Do you know anyone personally that's affected by these federal government cuts?
No, not personally.
So I know about 6 people that are being affected by Trump trying to cut jobs. I know a person that accepted a buyout. I know a person that's on the chopping block. I know people that had to send up the weekly emails. And every single person, I ask them what they do for work. And I'm just like, bro, I am so sorry you're about to lose your job. But I'm like, you probably also shouldn't have this job. It sounds a little made up. It sounds like a little like this shouldn't be where my taxpayer dollars go. Dude, that sounds horrible. And for those that are listening to this episode that this affects, I'm so sorry. But at the same time, like what are these jobs? There's a reason why these jobs are being cut or or stop working, getting paid out, and the government for the most part is still moving along just fine. There's just so much extra dead weight that it's like, oh my gosh, this is obviously an issue. Why are people fighting it?
Yeah, we said this a couple episodes ago. Again, there's so much fat to trim, but again, the trimming of the fat is with the power of the purse, is with Congress, and we're not actually attacking the problem at its root. We're just cutting off weeds that grow back the next day.
Yeah. And we are going to continue to be in that position until they do exactly what you just said. So let's pivot real quick and let's talk about maybe the other biggest story that's almost no longer story because of how quick this news cycle works, and that is Kilmar Garcia, the El Salvadorian national residing legally. I want to say that legally in Maryland. He was deported back to El Salvador on March 15th, 2025, despite a 2019 U.S. immigration court order that prohibited his removal due to the risk of persecution from gangs. The Trump administration acknowledged the deportation as an administrative error, but later cited alleged gang affiliation to justify the action. The U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the deportation was illegal and ordered the government to facilitate his release. However, the El Salvadorian president has refused to release Garcia, labeling him as a terrorist, and then the Trump administration contends its lack of authority to, facilitate his return. And so right now, Garcia remains in prison. I don't know if he's in prison, but he is in El Salvador. So what I want to say here first is Garcia is not a U.S. resident. He is not legally a U.S. citizen, and he doesn't have a green card. So he was protected under the immigration court order to protect him from gangs. And I think the most ironic part is that El Salvador is now one of the safest countries in the world because they cleaned up all their gangs. So that reason in 2019 no longer exists today. And if Garcia is in prison, which I believe he is, he's probably in prison with the gangs that he ran away from. I'm laughing because I'm in disbelief. I'm in a little bit of shock here, CK. So what are your takeaways here? That wasn't
You
real laughing. I was thinking,
emphasized,
oh my gosh.
you said legally twice and emphasized it both times. And the viewers can't see it, but you had the big air quotes. And so, what's your definition of legally,
No, no,
MR?
no. There were no air quotes. I swear there were no air quotes. No, from what I've read, the court I read it in 2019 said, hey, he's allowed to be here, but he's not a citizen and he doesn't have a green card. Dude, I don't know the inner workings of our courts, but the court said he can be here. What I actually think happened is that when ICE or whoever was going through the administrative database, they didn't see the court order because it's like in a separate um, file. They were looking for, hey, do you have a green card? Hey, are you listed to get a green card? Hey, are you on a visa? Or are you a citizen? And he wasn't any of those. So I think he was just a weird case that fell through the cracks, which is why he got picked up. And then
No,
he's
so okay. I, he showed up in 2012 here as an illegal immigrant,
like,
and
is that a fact?
that is a
Like,
fact.
like he illegally crossed the border.
He was here illegally. No. It does get hairy, I will say, because what you're saying. In 2019, he was due for deportation, not only because he was an illegal immigrant, but also because of crimes he committed.
Yeah, didn't he like beat his wife or something?
Yes, among other things. Now, his lawyer argued that he would be in trouble, face probably torture from the gang that he was running from, that he was a part of. Like he from MS-13 would seek retribution so that he would be allowed to stay because it would be cruel to send him pretty much to his death.
Yes. Okay. Yeah,
So
I
that's
read
the
that part.
legal. That's how he's here legally, because the court ordered like it would be inhumane to send him back, and gave him I forget the term, but like a right to stay.
So
That's
one thing I want to point out real quick is like I did a decent amount of reading, and then I know you did too, and we're coming to different conclusions on the information we read, which just goes to show the insane propaganda and narratives that are
spin,
being
yeah,
created about this guy. Dude, it's insane. Like hearing you talk, I'm like, oh, I didn't read that in the 5 articles I read about this guy. Like
exactly.
that is insane, terrifying, insane.
But it begs the question, right? If the court said he was allowed to stay because of the danger from the gang that would kill him, why was he in danger from a gang killing him? Was it because he was part of a gang? And was that gang MS-13? And is that MS-13 a foreign terrorist organization?
Does the why matter if he's protected to be here? Does the why matter if he's
It
deported?
absolutely matters, because if he is
Uh,
part of a terrorist organization, a foreign terrorist organization, then the legal status completely changes, right? Because if he's a
So are you
foreign
saying that
terrorist,
the courts messed up and they should never have made him a or gave him permission to stay?
they never even argued that point that he was part of MS-13, and MS-13
Oh.
wasn't labeled as a foreign terrorist organization until the Trump administration
Oh,
labeled
until
it.
like a few months ago. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a fair point.
but if he's a foreign terrorist because he's part of MS-13, which I mean, maybe it's not a fact, but I think the evidence points that he is part of MS-13. And if MS-13 is a foreign, and we've talked about this, you can maybe there's a little bit of the government does loosely label terrorist, non-terrorist. It's very
Sure.
political and politicized, and it's politicized for this
Absolutely.
very reason, because when you label someone a terrorist organization or a group of terrorist organization, and then you know by the way label individual foreign terrorists, it's very easy to do things without due process. So
Yeah.
that is a different argument, and for sure you can talk about the constitutionality of that. But if he was a foreign terrorist because he was part of MS-13, like first of all, if he was in danger of gang retribution, the only reason he was in danger is probably because he was part of a gang.
Yeah, we're making an assumption there. We don't know the facts, but I understand the point you're making though.
Yeah, that's my assumption, and I think the evidence points toward that. And so, like, if this is all true, if he was a member, let's just flip it. If he was a member of ISIS and we sent him back, would it be a problem? I don't think they would be getting a lot of news.
Yeah, dude, it makes it hard too. It makes it really, really hard with I don't know, man. There's so much information going on. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. There's so many narratives being created that the literal media can't keep up with the amount of things going on. Whether this is a Trump strategy and he's trying to do 100 different things at the same time so he can get certain things through, um, or he's chaotic and he's just shooting from the hip and these are things that he wants. I think the deportation of illegal immigrants is something that a lot of Trump supporters voted for,
Yeah,
and I think
I'll
what
do you one more, Mr.
okay.
this is one of those 90-10s that is just an easy win for Trump. Like I forget the name of the Maryland senator who went to El Salvador.
Oh yeah, yeah, I saw that.
Like, just think about the crime and the problems that Maryland has, and you're
Sure.
going to fight for this guy. Like, what do you think? Do you think the constituents are like, "Thank you, Senator"? I don't think so. This is a 90-10 problem, and this is the reason why Trump won the election, right? Because so many of these issues were 90-10, where 90% of the support were like, "I'm on board." Immigration in general, like the mass migrants that were coming to the U.S., that was 90-10. People were like, "We need to shut this down. This is way too much."
Yep. Dude,
And
so it's so funny. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to. So I was reading an article on AP News. I screenshot. I'm pretty sure I sent it to you, but it basically said with illegal immigration down, these towns can no longer support or these town economies are now crashing. And I was just like, is this article really going to talk about how illegal immigration is good for the small towns on the border that were preying off these desperate humans trying to cross the border? I was like, "Oh, dude, we're in a simulation." There's my conspiracy for the day. We're in a simulation. Dude, I don't know, man. It makes no
that's a
sense.
conspiracy every podcast. I'm not.
I know.
No, but I really think, like, when we're talking about immigration, Trump it is the single thing that Trump won on. Everything else like helped, but it was so out of hand, and the Democrats latched to it so much, and they're latching to this one story so much. It's a
Yeah.
mistake because no one, like, most people don't really, you can argue about, is it legal, is it not? Most people don't care. The guy was here initially illegally. He was never a citizen in the United States. Everyone wants the president to fight for their own people. That's what people want. We want, like, people want America first. And
Yeah, that's a
if you're fighting for some El Salvadoran national who also beat his wife, but may have, say, had some technicality that kept him here, that's not going to win. It's not going to win you an election. There's so many
yeah.
other fights. You can fight about the economy. You can fight about these tariffs and say, about the NASDAQ drop and the S&P nosediving. Fight those fights. Those are legitimate fights. Do not fight for this guy and spend all your time. You're going to lose in 2026 and you're going to lose in 2028 because it's a 90-10 issue.
No, I think that's a super fair point. And when you said, and honestly, when you just said that the Maryland, senator flew out there and tried to do this whole press campaign, like, "Oh, we're here for you, we're supporting you." I
It
have
couldn't
been to
have gone
Maryland.
worse, in my opinion, either.
I've been to Baltimore. I've been some of the. I have a buddy that's a cop in Maryland, and the stories he tells me, like you, and I think a part of why Trump won the American First, like there are so many issues domestically. Hey, you're spending your money because he had to fly there, right? Taxpayer monies flew him out there. Your
There's a
political
photo op
capital,
with them
everything.
drinking margaritas, and it could not have gone worse, I think.
Yeah, it's just really it really makes you want to be like, we need to fix our inner city. I mean, we're going off on a tangent away from immigration, but yes, the point is
I don't think it
fix
is a
things
tangent.
domestically and put the coin that Trump's using, America first. Because when you look in American cities, when you go to some of the rural areas of America, you're like, oh, these people are left behind. They're forgotten about. It is the 1%, the top 5% of Americans that are making, and everyone else is suffering to a degree. But before we go any more down this rabbit hole, I do want to say is that Trump has made some comments, or at least I've seen some things that saying like, "Hey, I want to deport U.S. citizens to El Salvador or outside the country," and I think that's where people kind of get on this crazy bandwagon of basically saying it's like, "Oh, does Trump feel like he can deport anybody he wants, regardless of what the Supreme Court or any court say?" I think that is what gives this life.
Maybe, MR. I don't think there's a lot of life. I think Trump has also said, again, we can talk about technicalities and legalities, and you can say it's super legal, it's super unconstitutional. But again, he's like, I want to deport pedophiles and mass murderers and serial killers. And I think most people are like, I don't care. Send that pedophile straight to hell. Do whatever you want with him. Torture him. And if the Democrats want to fight Trump tooth and nail about torturing a pedophile, most people will be like, yeah, I side with Trump. I don't care what the law says.
Yeah. Dude, that's a fair point. I mean, I'm sure I can come up with a counter argument to that, but that's a fair point.
Like there's a legal aspect for sure, and you say no, it's not
Yeah.
legal, it's not right. But most people are like, I don't care. Did he do anything inappropriate with children? you can send them straight to hell. Don't care.
Yeah, but that's why you have laws, and you don't live in parts of the Middle East where they behead people because they
No,
stole a fruit off a fruit stand. You know?
I agree. All of that's true, but again, it's a 90-10. It's a 90-10 in which 90% of people are like, not not an issue I care about, and honestly, do whatever you want. And 10% are fighting tooth and nail, like that's wrong, and that is the power. That's the best thing Trump does, and that's why he's been elected twice. Is that like he latches onto these 90s and the Democrat, and he also invokes this hardcore like dig my feet into the dirt stand in the Democrats to fight for these tens.
Yeah.
That was the whole trans thing in this election also was another 90-10 where
Yeah, that's
women,
true.
trans women in sports and everything, where like he came out with a commercial right before the election. He said, they're for they them, I'm for you, like all of that. I think that's the best, most electable thing about Trump is he latches onto these 90-10s.
Yeah, that is his superpower, is understanding what the people truly care about.
Yep.
But CK, I have had just an amazing time on this episode. It is so great to have you back. What are your final thoughts before we wrap it up? What else is on your mind? And I'll debate you
Oh,
on anything you want. I'll play the devil's advocate here.
I've been thinking about this one for a while, Mr.
Okay.
Let's see. Pam Bondi released phase 1 of the Epstein files February 27th, 2025. That's 54 days ago.
Yeah.
Donald Trump began his second presidency 91 days ago. So, what are we doing about these Epstein files? Now,
Nothing.
no, the reason I say this, right? Why were people, fed up with Biden and the Democrats this year? It's my thought, my argument is that because people hate when the powers that be, the elected officials, treat them like children, and like they try to pull the wool over their eyes and
Yep.
just say like, no, there's nothing to see here, like we're stupid. So like
Yep.
the whole Biden is totally like right of mind and not too old and not like forgetting who he
Yeah, it's
is. And
insulting.
it was insulting. It was insulting that the media and everyone was just like, nothing to
Oh, we're
see
too
here.
dumb to. Yep. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is the best Joe Biden you'll ever see. I think Joe Scarborough said, and F you if you disagree. Like, it was insulting. People were like, what are you talking about?
Yep.
And I think if the Republicans are going to lose the midterm, it's on this. It's equally as insulting to give phase 1 to a bunch of influencers, have it actually say nothing new, and then say, don't worry, phase 2 is coming, and then just be like, new topic, let's move on. Like, just don't bring it up anymore. Out of sight, out of mind. Pretend like we forgot.
Yeah. No, I
It
think
is
there's a lot of truth to
insulting.
that.
That's it's, I wouldn't say, maybe not the number one thing people wanted, but when you think about like CK's conspiracy corner, I would say, and wrap it all up together, 90-10. This is a 90-10, right? And if there ever was a conspiracy that everyone believed, it's that Epstein was doing stuff with nefarious people and powerful U.S. politicians and powerful U.S. people, and that the government is burying the story because it's going to impact the powers that be.
Oh, that's 100% the reason why. And maybe Trump. There's rumors that Trump
Almost
was involved
everyone
as
on
well.
both sides believe it. The Democrats believe Trump was involved. The Republicans think the Clintons were involved,
Sure. Yeah. 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 And
among
yeah.
other peoples.
Yeah.
So
No.
you are hurting yourself every day you left, and maybe you have to. Maybe Trump is involved. Maybe Trump is involved, and you cannot release the truth.
Yeah, but why would he even bring it up in the first place if he was involved? I don't know.
He, I, it was brought up to him. Every podcast he went on, people asked about it. He said, "Oh yeah, I can do that." And then Pam Body said, "It's on my desk." And then this and that. It's insulting to think that like we just forgot. What is that? Was that Jonah Hill quote? People don't forget.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of truth there, man. And I don't think that's why the Republicans will lose seats in the midterms. If anything, it'll probably be the economy being the number one issue. But I do hear your point is that it is insulting don't preach things that you're not going to follow through on. We know there's shady shit. Just tell us. And we won't find out for like 300 years when none of this matters anymore. And they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, the Clintons did go to Epstein's Island. You're like,
I,
oh, shit.
it begs the question: is like, why aren't you telling us? Because I don't think
Yeah,
Trump is
it
trying to
makes it worse. It
protect.
makes it worse.
I don't think Trump is trying to protect Bill Clinton.
No, but I'm sure there's a lot of other powerful people, influential people, and it'll overall discredit America to a certain amount, or it'll just involve people that tried to get Trump assassinated back, July of last year. There's or June of last year. No, I think it was July of last year. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. But all right, here's my thing. How quiet has Elon Musk been over the last like week, 2 weeks? Ever since, we can say he tried to spearhead Doge, he tried really hard. At the end of the day, the buck stops with Congress. Uh, Tesla stock crashed. He was bleeding billions of dollars. He failed to get a person elected on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Like the dude, and it was basically being painted as public enemy one from the leftists, which 5 years ago they were saying he was the greatest of all time. So the irony is ridiculous and just insane all at the same time. But he has been so quiet, and I wouldn't be surprised, give another month or two, his PR team comes out and they try and paint him back like, hey, he's a good person. Like Jeff Bezos has really reimaged himself right now. He's not the hated person he was a few years ago. He completely rebranded himself into the mainstream media. It worked. Now, again, I don't know that much about Jeff Bezos, but I knew he was an enemy for a while. But anyways, I find it very interesting that Elon is radio silence. And also, we really haven't heard that much from RFK yet. So I know he had that one thing about connecting things to autism, and he had that one speech that really rubbed people the wrong way there. But I want to hear some more from RFK.
I That was recent. That was within the last week. I don't think so. I think he just made a big splash. It's just got the lead got buried probably with a lot of other things. Regarding Elon, I think you're wrong. I just don't think Elon cares. I don't know if he has a PR person, to be
To
honest.
some extent, he cares. If it affects his bottom line, he's going to care.
Maybe. I mean,
If
like
it
Tesla.
affects what he wants to achieve, he's going to care.
If you think about it, like Tesla doesn't advertise. He said on multiple occasions, Tesla doesn't have a marketing department. They don't care. Like the product speaks for itself, and I think Elon is the same way. Now, I think he cares a little bit. You're right. I think he's been quiet because he just doesn't. It's just exhausting.
Well, that's the other part too. He cares because it's not good for his mental health. It's not good for his overall well-being. Being incredibly hated by half the people in the country where they're destroying every Tesla they see, obviously being dramatic. Anyways, isn't fun, and no one wants that. Sometimes you want to be like, dude, I just want to live my life a little. You know? I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. I did. No, this is a very far conspiracy. I did hear Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, is on the way out, and I heard part of it is because of some conflict with Elon.
Interesting. Also, we don't have time, but we also haven't talked about the potential insider trading, with Trump talking about in the Oval Office about like, oh, didn't you guys all buy stocks when the stock market crashed? We definitely felt like there's some stock market manipulation going on.
Is it insider trading when he told everyone the morning of?
Dude, don't
It's
even get me
outsider trading.
started on that. We'll talk like another 15, 20 minutes on this. I'm so anti people having access
For
to the
sure.
information they do, trading. Okay, I want to go on to it. All right, let's wrap it up because we're at like 45 minutes. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Daily Turnip. If you made it all the way through, we appreciate you so much. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and honestly, just keep on listening. We had a record-breaking 640 views on one of our episodes, and we had a record low, like 25 views on another episode. So our core 150, I know you're still out there. We appreciate you more than anything.
Love you, Mom.
Honestly. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Really appreciate it. Well, anyways, we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And at the end of the day, guys, it's going to be all right. We're going to all make it. Well, hopefully. Have a good one.